My name is Charles Whitman. I'm 61 years old. And lately I've been realizing that most of my life, people appreciated me, but they never really knew me. I don't say that to accuse anyone. This isn't about blame. It's just something that's been sitting with me, heavier than I expected, now that my days feel numbered in a way they never did before. I'm telling this because I don't need applause anymore. I don't need agreement. I'm telling it because I'm running out of time, to be honest, and this feels like the last honest thing I can give. I wake up earlier now. The house is quiet at that hour. Too quiet, sometimes. I make coffee the same way I always have. I stand at the counter. I look out the window. And there's this feeling that keeps coming back, like I spent decades being useful, reliable, steady, and somehow missed being seen. People would say, Charles is a good man. They'd say, you can count on him. They'd say, he's solid. And they meant it as praise. I accepted it as praise. But none of those words ever touched who I was when I was alone. At 61, you start thinking differently about time. Not dramatically, just practically. You notice how many people your age are gone. You notice how your body doesn't bounce back. You notice how the future has fewer blank pages than it used to. And you start replaying things. Not the big failures. The small decisions that stacked up so quietly you never questioned them. I wasn't unhappy in my 20s. I was hopeful. I had plans. Modest ones, but real. I grew up believing that being dependable mattered more than being expressive. That showing up was more important than opening up. That love was proven through effort, not words. My father was that way. A good man. Not a talker. He worked. He paid bills. He fixed things. He never asked how you were feeling, but he made sure you had what you needed. I learned early that approval came from being useful. So I got good at it. In my 20s, I worked hard. I said yes to overtime. I volunteered when no one else did. People noticed. Supervisors liked me. Friends relied on me. And I mistook that reliance for closeness. I married young. Not recklessly. We cared about each other. She liked that I was steady. I liked that she was warm. But even then, I was already choosing silence over risk. If something bothered me, I swallowed it. If something hurt, I told myself it wasn't worth bringing up. I thought that was maturity. I thought that was love. When our first child was born, I felt proud. Terrified too, but mostly proud. I promised myself I'd be the kind of father who never failed his family. And I took that promise very seriously. I worked more. I worried more. I listened less. I was there, physically. At dinner. At school events. But I was always carrying something else in my head. Responsibility, deadlines, the quiet pressure to keep everything from falling apart. People thanked me a lot back then. For working late. For fixing things. For handling problems. No one asked what I was afraid of. No one asked what I wanted. And I didn't offer. In my 30s, life sped up. That's how it feels looking back. Days blurred into routines. Work, home, sleep. Weekends are filled with errands and obligations. I told myself this was temporary. That once things settled down, I'd slow down. I'd talk more. I'd be more present. There was always going to be time later. I missed small things without realizing I was missing them. Conversations that could have gone deeper. Moments when my wife looked tired and needed more than help. She needed to be heard. My kids learned early not to bother me when I looked stressed. They weren't afraid of me. They were considerate. And that should have worried me more than it did. People would say, "Your dad works so hard." They'd say it like it explained everything. At work, I was respected. Promotions came slowly but steadily. I became someone others leaned on. When problems came up, they came to me. When things went wrong, I stayed calm. I wore that like armor. I didn't realize armor keeps things out as well as it keeps you safe. I didn't talk about doubts, or regrets, or the quiet feeling that something essential was being postponed. I thought postponement was harmless. I thought it was responsible. In my 40s, cracks started to show. Not loudly, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. My wife started saying things like, "You're always here, but you're never really here." I didn't know how to answer that. I heard it as criticism instead of loneliness. So I defended myself instead of listening. I said things like, "I'm doing this for us." Which was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that I didn't know how to be known. I didn't know how to let someone see my uncertainty without feeling like I was failing. So I doubled down on being dependable. My kids grew into teenagers. They became quieter around me. Not distant, just careful. I thought that was normal. I thought it meant they were growing up. There were moments, small, ordinary moments, when I could have chosen differently. A night when my daughter lingered at the kitchen table, clearly wanting to talk. A weekend when my son asked if I could help him with something unnecessary, just as an excuse to be together. I noticed those moments. I really did. And I told myself, later. After this project. After this deadline. Later never announced when it arrived. The damage wasn't sudden. That's the hardest part to explain. Nothing blew up. No dramatic betrayal. No single mistake. Just distance. Accumulating quietly. Like dust, you don't notice until it's everywhere. In my early 50s, my marriage ended. Not in anger. In exhaustion. We sat at the table and admitted we felt like roommates who had lost the language to reach each other. She said she felt alone for years. I believed her. I just didn't know when it started. Or how to go back. The divorce was polite. Civil. Everyone said we handled it well. I moved into a smaller place. The kids were grown by then. They visited. We talked. But something had shifted. They loved me. I know that. But they didn't come to me with their inner lives. They came with updates. I was appreciated, respected, but not confided in. Around that time, my mother got sick. Quickly. Unexpectedly. I spent long hours at the hospital, sitting in those plastic chairs. She was tired. Smaller than I remembered. One afternoon, she looked at me and said, "You were always such a good boy." She smiled when she said it, and something in me tightened. Because even then, at the edge of her life, she didn't really know me either. She knew my reliability, my politeness, my restraint. She never knew how often I doubted myself, or how lonely I felt even surrounded by people. She passed not long after. I held her hand. I told her I loved her. And I wondered, quietly, if she ever knew who I was beyond being good. That question followed me home. In the years since, I've lost more people. Friends. Colleagues. Every funeral makes time feel heavier. More solid. People say nice things. They talk about service. Commitment. Stability. I listen and think, yes, that's all true. And also incomplete. I'm retired now. Or semi-retired. The days are slower. There's less noise to hide behind. I have acquaintances. Neighbors who wave. Old coworkers who check in once in a while. I have children who love me, but they don't really know how to reach me, and I don't know how to invite them closer. I don't blame them. I taught them who I was by what I showed. The turning point came quietly, as most real ones do. It was a medical appointment. Routine, they said. The doctor talked about numbers, timelines, possibilities. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make mortality feel less theoretical. I went home and sat alone that evening. No TV, no phone, and for the first time, I let myself ask a question I'd avoided my whole life. Who actually knows me? Not who appreciates me. Not who respects me. Who knows my fears? My regrets? The parts of me that never made it into conversation. The answer was uncomfortable. There were people who knew pieces, but no one who knew the whole. And at 61, that realization doesn't motivate you. It doesn't inspire change. It just settles. There are things that can't be fixed now. That's not pessimism. It's reality. Certain conversations needed to happen decades ago to matter the way they should have. Certain bridges can't be rebuilt once enough time has passed. I can't go back and be the father who lingered longer. I can't be the husband who learned to speak earlier. I can't make people miss a version of me they never got to know. I can only sit with what is. And what is quieter than I expected old age to be. I don't feel dramatic regret, just a steady sadness. A sense that I misunderstood what mattered while I still had choices. If you're listening to this, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I don't trust advice that comes from hindsight pretending to be wisdom. All I can tell you is what surprised me. Being appreciated feels good. It really does. But it doesn't keep you company when the house is quiet. It doesn't show up when you're afraid. Being known requires risk I didn't take. Time I assumed I'd always have. If there's anything I wish I'd understood earlier, it's that presence isn't something you schedule later. It's something you either practice now or slowly lose access to. I don't need sympathy. I've had a decent life. I just needed to say this out loud, once, before I can't. If this meant something to you, you can sit with it. You don't need to act on it. Just notice it. As for me, I make my coffee in the morning. I stand at the window. I let the quiet be what it is. There isn't much time left. But there's still honesty. And that will have to be enough.